Greetings and salutations, friends and family. Welcome back to Mind Keys. So it is a sunny, beautiful day here in the park in Austin, Texas. And I wanted to kind of shoot you a full moon off the cuff video where I kind of just ramble and riff a little bit on why I started this channel, what I'm up to, what the work I do is as a coach and, as a thought leader and as a YouTuber here, why I'm having this conversation with you. And I want to share a bit with you about kind of one of the core problems that I see in the spiritual community and in the healing community that I dealt with, and it's something you see a lot in the psychedelic world as well, and how that drove me personally to take up coaching and hypnotherapy and NLP as a way of remedying that particular issue. So, if you're somebody who has dealt with problems of being someone who's spiritually aware, someone who's spiritually awakened, someone who's tapped in and switched on, as they say, and you have practices that you do and you get results from them, but maybe they're not getting you the results that you once had or the results that you want. Maybe they're not really leading you in the direction that you most need, or they are delivering results to you but only while you're doing the practice, and then when you stop doing the practice you stop getting the result. Or if you're having some sort of issue where it's just slow going, where you're not really changing, you're not really transforming in the kind of way that you had hoped to. If you're struggling with any of that kind of issue or problem, I'm going to address that in this video and tell you what is causing that and why it is that you're kind of stuck and not evolving and not growing the way you'd like to, and how to fix it. Because there is a fix to it, there is a solution, and it's really at the heart of the work that I do and at the heart of the conversation that I'm having here with you now, here on YouTube. So watch on and let's go ahead and get into it. So like I said, this is going to be kind of all over the place in terms of content with this video. I'm kind of, it's full moon today, full moon in Gemini, so I'm feeling rather Gemini-like in the sense that I have a lot of interests and topics and I'm in the mood to communicate them all rather than kind of hone down in on one particular thing. So hopefully you can hang as I kind of go all over the place with this video. Before I explain to you the solution to that particular problem I was just talking about, I wanted to share with you a bit about kind of the broad structure of the work that I do, like what's underneath it, what's kind of the big picture thing, and what are the kind of upcoming things that I want to do for you guys, because I'm building structures, I'm building websites and videos and content for you guys that will really help you to transform and heal yourselves when you need to, so that you can rely on yourself without having to afford a coach or something like that anytime that you need to get work done in terms of personal transformation work. So let's go ahead and talk about it a bit. So one of the major reasons I decided to start making these videos on YouTube was not only to share what I know is possible from my time and my history with psychedelics, what I've learned, and my history with personal development and hypnosis, and the kind of interesting, unique way that I found to put those things together. I want to start to communicate to you that that was possible, that you can pair the kind of rapid change work skill of hypnosis with the kind of neuroplasticity and the kind of wide open nervous system learning capabilities that psychedelics offer us. And I think when you put those two things together, you get a really unique personal change paradigm that you're not going to see anywhere else. I do think that it is possible to change without psychedelics, obviously, and I think hypnotherapy is, in my opinion, probably the best tool I know of at the moment, or one of the better tools I know of at the moment to get those changes. And you can start changing right away as soon as you start to implement and understand how to use self-hypnosis. And I'd recommend that you start to learn it, and I'd recommend that if you're interested in that kind of thing, please either hit me up, I can teach you privately, or I will be creating content for that here on the channel. So there's that. There's also microdosing and just using psychedelics as their own form of therapy in and of themselves. I have a lot of thoughts about that, a lot to communicate about that, because in my own experience, having definitely messed with psychedelics kind of at length, we could say, we'll just leave it at that for now. I have more to say about that, but having dosed micro, and normal standard doses and macro doses. My personal experience has been that while they can effectively shift you, and especially in the short term, in the longer term, they're not necessarily going to leave you with a long-term lasting change like you might like, but they will give you gifts along the way. So it's really about putting two and two together here in terms of recognizing what the gifts are that psychedelics are giving you in terms of insight and vision and states and emotions and wisdom, and pairing those kind of targets, those kinds of directionality. You now know, you kind of have a North Star to aim towards, then implementing change work to start to actually practically, lastingly transform yourself. So that's kind of the basic idea behind the work that I do. Even more fundamentally, you can think of it in terms like this. There's kind of two steps to this personal development path, and there always has been, and there probably always will be. There are a couple different ways you can look at these two steps. One way you can look at it is that you are fundamentally first clearing out the old patterns, clearing out the old belief systems, the old behaviors, the old mindsets, the old emotional habits, the old neurology. You're kind of unwiring, you're kind of undoing. And in my experience, this is a lot of what therapy is. It's a lot about the past. It's a lot about relating to what has already been and what is already known, and challenging, questioning, transforming, or kind of adjusting that as needed to function properly. And for most people, that's the easier half of the equation, but that's only half of the equation. The other half of the equation, and this is really debatably where psychedelics become even more valuable and more useful, or at least, let's say spiritual practice, whether that's meditation, yoga, all forms of kind of breath work, any sort of spiritual practice. This is where this starts to become really useful, is developing the new. Developing a broader sense, a newer sense, developing a new sense of self, developing a new sense of your skills, pushing your skills further, cultivating new skills, and just generally expanding into where you want to go out from that kind of cleared path. So once you've cleared what you could say are the roadblocks in the way, then you've got to work at developing the self that you want to become and actualizing the potential that you sense inside of yourself, turning that into lasting embodied change, basically. So that's one way of looking at it. The other way that we can look at this, though, is that you can also look at it in terms of problems and resources. So one of the kind of fundamental frameworks in the work that I do, so if you've heard of NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, one of our kind of fundamental concepts there that we work with is the idea of problems and resource states, or resources, not just states. So the basic idea is that it doesn't matter what the mental, emotional, spiritual, psychological, challenge or problem is. It doesn't matter. A problem is a problem, and it's a problem because you're lacking the resources to solve the problem. So what you do, typically when you're in a problem state, is you're not noticing all the resources you have, or you're not developing the resources you have, or you're not accessing the resources you have. And one of the fundamental concepts in NLP, one of the kind of working axioms that you start with in NLP, is that we have already fundamentally the solutions, the resources to the problems that we're dealing with. So usually what the real problem isn't even the problem. The real problem is that we aren't recognizing that we also have the resource we need, and when we plug it into the problem goes away. And so this is one of the things that I do in my work constantly. It's something that I'll be doing here on this channel, teaching you how to do. And it's fundamentally, I think, a really practical, useful way to start to see your own personal growth path. Whether you're looking at healing the past, so whether you're looking at psychological healing or emotional healing, whether you're looking at developing yourself and becoming more amazing and stepping into your more fully realized higher self, if you want to look at it that way. Whatever that is, there are going to be a series of either problems or there's going to be stuff to clear. You could look at it either way, and there are either going to be resources that you already have, or there are going to be skills and a new way of being to develop. So that's fundamentally the work that we do at the most basic level. And so this kind of leads me on a bit of a tangent here. So we're going to kind of switch tracks a little bit. And I want to tell you what the broader vision I have is, and kind of what my passion here is. Why am I doing this work? What do I want to do with you? What am I offering you? What is it I can do for you? What is it that I think is exciting about the potential of, spiritual growth, personal growth, spiritual awakening, psychedelics, Kundalini awakenings, self-actualization work, any of that kind of stuff. What's cool about that? Like, why the fuck does it even matter? What's its purpose? Well, to me, here's what juices me up about all that. In my history, when I was younger, I had a lot of psychedelic experiences, like a lot. And they were beautiful and profound and healing and awakening and visionary, and just generally juiced me up and gave me a whole new vision of myself and what's possible in life as a human being. Gave me a whole new understanding of what it means to be human and what we carry inside of ourselves and the kind of potential that we have. And I would have these experiences, either with myself. Sometimes I would, see these experiences unfold for others, where I would be just jaw-dropped, gobsmacked, amazed at the kind of fluid, flawless wisdom and insight and power and peace and capability and skill that could flow out of a nervous system that was unimpeded, and just allowing the kind of divine insight or the divine presence, the divine, I don't know what else to call it really. I mean, the divine energy, the divine, really, to flow through the person outward into the world. And I would see all kinds of little moments, little miracles, little moments of magic, little moments of power, little moments of truly high function come out of people, whether it was me or my friends around me. And it's beautiful. It's profound. It's the sweetest thing to be in the presence of and to feel. When you feel yourself flowing and operating at beyond your very best, beyond what you knew was possible, and you find yourself saying exactly the right words and operating exactly the right way and excelling at whatever it is you care about and whatever it is that's meaningful to you, and digging deeper than you even knew how to dig, and unearthing gifts in yourself you didn't even know you carried, and then actualizing them and turning those into not only lasting change for you, but positive impact in the world around you. To me, I can't think of anything better. I can't think of anything more beautiful than that. And the interesting thing is, if you take psychedelics long enough, you start to have these kinds of experiences, right? Like, they will happen. If you let go, if you open up and you allow yourself to go there, you'll have those kinds of experiences. And I think we see that a lot, in the art of the 60s and 70s. I think we see that a lot in music. I think we see that a lot in spiritual culture. But the question is, the kind of unique problem is, what do you do when you start to have these experiences, but then you get locked back out of them when you come down? Sorry, there's a jet passing over there. Hopefully you heard me clearly. But anyways, so it kind of begs the question. You have a few of those experiences, even one of those really, and it's kind of inevitable. You start to wonder, what would it be like? What would the world be like if we all lived like that? What would my life be like if I lived that way more often? If I was in that kind of flow more regularly? If I was tapped in that way, who would I be? And not only that, what would the world be like? What would we collectively live like if we were all tapped into our divine capability, our divine wisdom, our divine presence more often? And how do we do that? How do we actualize and actually achieve more of those states, more of those feelings, more of that connection, and really turn that into lasting personal transformation and lasting social transformation, and potentially lasting global transformation? I know that's kind of very broad and utopian and kind of pie in the sky. And I'm not trying to sell you on something that's unrealistic. I'm really, really interested in exploring this territory from a very practical, real, very, authentic, honest, discerning point of view. I don't want to encourage people to run into fantasy and run away from reality and tune out, what's real and what's true, and be fake. What I am interested in is how do we take the highest, strongest, purest moments of wisdom and insight and guidance and self-empowerment and turn that into lasting change for each one of us as a way that is authentic to each one of us, that is natural and true and right for each one of us. What would that look like? And what would that do? To me, that's a compelling, exciting question. And when I think of personal development, to me, that's what I think of. I think of self-actualization, basically self-actualizing the soul into the material world, self-actualizing the higher self into your life, because having felt those states, having been in those places, having had those kinds of experiences, I can't help but think that anything less than that for any human being is selling ourselves massively short of what we're capable of and really, what we have on offer to us. Why would we not receive what is naturally ours and enjoy the gifts of this body and this mind and really kind of lean into those gifts and do the most with them that we can? To me, I can't think of anything more fun, anything more beautiful, more elegant, more poetic, more magical, more interesting, more mysterious, more rewarding, more strange, more profound than that. And I think that's what drives me. That's the work that I want to do. And what I'm really looking for here with this channel, ideally I'd like to reach a lot of people, but I realize that the nature of the kind of conversation I'm having with you isn't for everyone. Like the work I want to do isn't for everyone. It's really, I'm looking for those 1,000 true fans. So I'm looking to build a relationship with you guys that is just based on, those of you who get it, who understand what the fuck I'm talking about, and it hits home for you, and it's meaningful in your heart too, and it's meaningful to you, and it's something you're driven towards and excited about also, or curious about also. And I'm really looking for that and building a community around that. I'm looking for people who are, spiritually attuned, spiritually interested, but also very practical, very real, and want to grow and want to self-actualize and want to do this not from a place of, low vibration, and not from a place of escapism, and not from a place of self-delusion, but from a place of really wanting to, drink the nectar of your own being, to really like soak up the divine light that is, inside of you already, and unleash it, unlock it, and let it out, and let it through your body and through your being and through your vessel out into the world as a gift back, because quite frankly, this world needs it. And, I think the more we begin to discover how to actually unlock that stuff, how to actually turn that into lasting, behavioral change, the more it's a win-win for everyone. The better you feel in your body, the more self-esteem you feel because you are living your highest truth. And the more likely you are to create positive, impactful changes, both personally in your own life and more broadly out in the world, if that's your interest, which I think is just a win-win all the way around. How could it not be? So like I was saying, part of that work, because there is that fundamental first part, which I think appeals to more people, which is the work of, clearing the past, of clearing the blocks, of healing the issues. I think most people don't really recognize or know much about themselves in terms of their positive extreme, how far into the good, how far into the great they can go. I think that's much more an unknown for most people. What most people recognize more about themselves are their problems, are their issues, are their fears, are their pain points. And I've certainly suffered plenty. I've certainly lived a life of hell for many, many years. And discovered how to get out for myself. And so that's a huge part of the work too. I mean, that's step one. That's half the work really, is, climbing our way out of hell together, or personally, individually if you have to. And so what I want to do, in that regard, I'll do both really, but what I want to do is I want to build a membership site where you can subscribe and you can cancel anytime you want. But what's going to be on offer is a whole library of personal change work sessions, shall we call them, where you can self-guide yourself through these change work sessions and heal, whatever you need to heal. So they'll be kind of targeted around particular issues. So say, for example, social anxiety, which was one of the primary ones that I started this channel with, there'll be a whole set of change work, sessions. So kind of NLP sessions, self-hypnosis sessions on self-esteem. There'll be another set on anxiety. There'll be another set on depression. There'll be another set on, money issues. There'll be another set on identity issues. There'll be another set on blah, 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 blah. So I'll keep adding to that library. I'll keep growing it and making it bigger, making it more interesting, making it something that just grows and grows and grows in value over time. Along with that, I will probably, I'm not sure yet, but I'll probably do something like some Q&As, maybe some stuff that's a little more sensitive that I wouldn't want to make public here on YouTube or anywhere else. I might do reviews of other personal development stuff that I've done, and give my honest critiques and feedback on, my thoughts on different schools of personal development. I'm not sure. I mean, it's kind of open to negotiation with you guys. If there's some content you want as a subscriber, I'd be happy to entertain how to do it and how to create it. I might also look at stuff like bringing in experts on, say, Chinese medicine and how to do acupressure to kind of do life maintenance stuff, or different yoga teachers, stuff like that, meditation teachers. Kind of bring in some experts from different fields to kind of round out this study of, self-actualization and integration of, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being in a practical way. So giving you just tools, constantly updating it. That's kind of the vision I have, and making it affordable so that if you're somebody who's broke, if you're somebody who struggles financially, if you're somebody who has a really hard time, making ends meet month to month, but you want and need some tools for mental, emotional healing, and you resonate with what I'm saying and the work I do, and it's something that's kind of up your alley, but you just don't have the means to, hire a coach like myself, or to hire, even just like go to therapy, then this will at least be a set of tools to kind of help you out to some degree. Hopefully a lot. I know that for me and for a lot of people that I know, hypnotherapy has been profoundly impactful in terms of the kind of change that it can create. I know that it can create really rapid change, and that in a lot of ways I think it's more effective than therapy, and I can go into reasons why I think that in the future. But basically I want to create a suite of tools for you guys to use so that you can heal yourselves, so that you can transform and do the work on your own and grow and evolve. So that's a big part of what I'm going to be up to over the coming months. And please bear with me as I build it. It's been very slow going because I'm not coaching full time, so I'm not living off of coaching money, which means I have to work another full-time job alongside coaching. So my free time to build this kind of stuff, very limited. On that note, quick note, I want to say that I'm kind of struggling here with the channel in terms of, do I make better content and less of it, so better thumbnails, working more at my public speaking, working more on audio, video quality, editing, all that kind of stuff, which takes time, practice, money, etc., or do I just kind of keep ripping out these quick and dirty videos for you, getting the content up, because there's quite frankly so much content. So there's so much I have to say. There's so much I want to share with you guys, and I think it's really going to light you up with wisdom and with insight and with excitement and with passion. And I'd kind of rather just share it and not worry about how polished it is, but at least not immediately, not in the short term. But I'd like to hear from you guys as well. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the editing's crappy. It doesn't matter if I'm a little bit rambly while I kind of learn how to make good videos. It doesn't matter to you, whether or not the thumbnails are amazing and humorous and, clickbaity as hell, or are you more interested in just solid, like juicy content? Because I've got a lot of it on store for you guys. Also, I would like to know, since I'm asking you questions, what are your problems? What do you struggle with? Why, if you take psychedelics, why do you take them? What is it you're hoping to achieve from your use of psychedelics? This is to me a very interesting question. And, more broadly, are there problems that you struggle with regardless of whether or not psychedelics help you out? Are there problems you struggle with, and what are those problems, and how might I be able to help you with them? Okay, so, as promised, I wanted to address this question I posed at the top of the video, which was, if you're someone who's struggling with being spiritual and maybe you've had some mystical experiences, whether those were from psychedelics or from, meditation practices or spiritual practices, or maybe you just had like a genuine spiritual awakening moment, and you're struggling with the fact that maybe when you do those practices, you feel better in the short term, but they don't seem to be giving you the long-term change that you want. Maybe you have a vision for yourself and who you could be and the potential you carry inside yourself, but you have a hard time actualizing it. Maybe you notice that, as beautiful as psychedelics are in terms of moments of inspiration, that inspiration fades quickly and you're not able to turn that into lasting personal growth, lasting personal change, besides maybe just kind of knowing, being a little more wiser for the wearer, so to speak. If you struggle with that and you're like, how come I can, eat mushrooms and tap into the light and you realize God in all things and see the light in all things and become aware that everything is a living, breathing, singular entity with many bodies and forms, and I can feel the oneness of the universe, and I can feel the bliss and the power of creation itself, and I can feel myself aligned with all the beauty and the mystery and the flow, and I feel this profound truth and this profound goodness inside of me and this profound strength and capacity to do amazing things. And then I come down off the psychedelic and it goes away, and I go back to my old habits of eating junk food and staying up late and watching too much TV or porn or video games or whatever it is. I go back into my coping mechanisms, and I go back into playing small, and I go back into my dramas, and I go back into the same life problems, the same relationship problems, the same fears, the same anxieties, the same struggles, the same money issues, the same anger issues, the same whatever, right? Negative states, whatever it might be for you. If you're struggling with that kind of a problem of kind of having these highs and lows of accessing your divine self, and then your daily, day-to-day problems come back, and you're wondering, why is that? How come you haven't permanently changed? How come even though you've touched the light, that you haven't changed? I wanted to kind of address this for a moment and give you a reason why. So here's what I've discovered. This is so weird, and I'm going to make a whole other video on it, but I want to just give you kind of the punchline here and give you the short. So what I've discovered is that lasting change has to happen at an identity level. It has to happen at basically what you would think of as your ego. That typically for a spiritual person, what happens most of the time is that we learn to use spirituality to get outside of our narrative, to get outside of our identity, to get outside of our ego for a little while. And we usually do this, typically by psychedelics or by meditation or by spiritual practices, and we find that when we are outside of our narrative, when we are outside of our problems, we feel connected, we feel whole, we feel empowered, we see new vision, new things occur to us, new solutions to our problems occur to us, and we feel fine, and we feel great, and we feel amazing. But what's happening in that process? So we'll just use psychedelics as an example here, although this really could be applied to spiritual practices without drugs being involved at all. what happens is that you're basically just shifting states outside of and beyond your identity. So you're not shifting your identity, you're just leaving it behind for a while. And, some people who do this a lot, may build a new identity around it. They may build, I'm sure you've heard of spiritual bypassing. If you haven't, I'll do a video on that at some point, I'm sure. They may use spirituality as a way to bypass their issues or to build a new identity that's a holier than thou, perfect spiritual identity. Or they build an identity based on this kind of divine construction, this kind of fantasy that they've created, or this sense of archetypal energies inside of themselves that they've noticed and attached their identity to. Or they build a new identity based on a set of values and principles that they've learned from a spiritual practice or from their community and friends around them. Whatever it might be, you will see people who shift their identity or seemingly shift their identity, from a psychedelic experience. If we're using that as an example. But here's the problem. What's actually happening in those cases is that these people haven't actually shifted their identity. They've just grafted on a spiritual sheen, a spiritual set of ideas, a spiritual set of concepts on top of what was already an old identity, their original identity, and all the pain and all the misunderstandings and all the dysfunction that was carried inside of that original identity. So they actually haven't transformed at an identity level. They've actually just added like a shellac of spiritual sheen on top of it. And that's no good. That doesn't actually cause change or transformation. So if you try to deny the fears that you've carried since childhood, if you try to deny your own insecurities, if you try to abandon and ignore your weaknesses or your self-doubt or your self-judgment or your self-rejection, or you carry feelings and thoughts inside of yourself that are socially you think unacceptable and therefore you try to bury them and hide them, or you see yourself in any of these lights, and you oppress them and they effectively become part of what Jung would call the shadow. Really all you're doing is just stuffing all that away, and then all of that just controls you more because you're not in touch with it, so it has free reign to operate inside your unconscious. And this is why people struggle to actually actualize real lasting personal change with spiritual practice, because so often the spiritual practice just takes you outside of your identity, especially if it's a Hindu or Buddhist practice, some sort of Eastern practice based on this narrative of destroying the ego, of letting the ego go, of transcending the ego. Now transcending is an interesting word, because what does it mean to transcend? It means to include and grow beyond. So that's a very different paradigm, although often that word will get used along with destroy the ego, let the ego go, realize the ignorance of the ego, realize the illusoriness of the ego, any of those kinds of terms, right? Those are all actually very different actions, very different approaches, and have very different meanings at a linguistic level if you stop and you think about it. But the point I want to make about that is just that if you struggled to if you're stuck, if you're a spiritual person and you have these spiritual experiences under your belt, and you have these spiritual paradigms, these spiritual concepts that you've taken in, whether it's through study or firsthand experience or a combination of the two, and then when you do them you feel great, but then you go back to being your old self. Or maybe you take psychedelics and you feel great when you're on the psychedelic and you get set straight and your mind is aligned and you get all this clarity and all these downloads and all this guidance, and then you come back down and you lose the motivation to take action on them, and you kind of falter from that level of vibration. What's going on is that you need to change at an identity level. As paradoxical as that sounds, you need to shift your core identity, which means you need to work with your actual identity, and then you need to learn how to transform it. And this is really the heart of the work that I do. This is what my coaching work is about. What I do with people is I work with them at an identity level, because it's pretty much the deepest level that you can change at outside of spiritual transformation. But if you're already engaging psychedelics, you're already engaging a spiritual path, you already have the spiritual transformation tools. But you can't just change at that level and not have your identity shift with it and not have your belief shift with it. So I help people shift their identity to be in alignment with their spiritual truth, with their spiritual self. And sometimes this is very practical, very worldly. I know that sounds very deep, and it is and can be. But sometimes this is as simple as somebody who knows that they need to say, work harder, have a stronger work ethic, something very practical like that. And they know they know they need to in order to succeed in the area that they want in life, but their identity is preventing them from doing so. Or I have someone, that I'm working with who their identity is that they're stuck. Now, how do you self-actualize and grow and transform in your life if your view of yourself, if your belief about yourself is that you're stuck? Because if your notion in your body, not just belief at the level of mind, but belief at the level of feeling in your body is that you're stuck, then you're going to have a hard time moving past that and growing and evolving. It's going to be counter to what you know yourself as. So obviously that implies a change of identity is necessary in order to grow. And growth is obviously a very natural thing. It's actually very unnatural to be stuck. It's actually very difficult. It takes a lot of psychic, emotional energy and effort to remain stuck. Changing it's natural. It's part of life. Like, we all change. We all shift and evolve, just like the seasons. So to not shift and evolve, it actually takes effort, takes unconscious effort. And so why would we make that kind of unconscious effort? Well, we would do that in order to preserve our sense of identity. So that's the work I do, and that's really the answer to this interesting problem. And if you see this really dramatically with psychedelics, it's like, take acid, you have this amazing experience of rainbows and lights and wisdom and insight and divine transmission, and then you come back down and you're like ready to live your highest truth, and then you end up just falling back into the same old patterns. Why? Because when you're in that state, you basically just transcended your identity, and then you come back and you're back in your old identity. So your identity hasn't changed, so why would your behaviors change if your identity hasn't changed? So the answer is identity level change. That's the missing piece to this kind of quandary, this kind of question of lasting self-actualization at a spiritual level, emotional level, mental level. Whether or not we're using psychedelics as a tool to gain those insights or some other tool, some other practice, doesn't really matter. Because it could be the same thing. I see this with yoga practitioners. I see this with, spiritual practitioners. I see this with people who do these intense hardcore practices. It's the same thing. They still, when they're not on retreat, when they're not doing their practice, they still, have their old crappy behaviors that they had when they were teenagers. So this is the answer. It's identity level change. This is the name of the game, and it's what I want to offer you guys. If any of you are interested in what I'm saying, if this hits home for you, please feel free to hit me up. Email me, DM me, whatever you want, and I'd be happy to set up a call with you. We can talk about what that looks like, and and if you want personal private coaching through this process, I can help you through that. I'm well studied at it. I understand it very deeply, and it's really cool, and it's really fun, and it's not nearly as emotional and intense as it might sound like it is. So if that's something you're interested in, if you want to change quickly, if you want to shift at an identity level to start to permanently change and resolve this stuff, hit me up. I'm happy to help you with that. If not, if you either know you can't afford that kind of thing, or if you simply aren't sold on it, but you're interested in what I'm talking about and you're interested in general in this, please watch on this channel. There's going to be a lot more content about this. Like I said, I will be setting up a subscription site at some point here where you'll have access to a whole library of personal change work practices if you want to do that, if that hits home for you, self-hypnosis techniques, and probably I will be developing like a protocol, if you will, an approach to working with psychedelics for this kind of goal of lasting personal transformation. And if nothing else, if you just think I'm weird or funny or entertaining or challenging, please watch on and comment, like, and subscribe, engage with my channel, help me grow it. It would mean a lot to me, and yeah, I'm here to do good work in the world, and thank you for being along for the ride with me. Take care, guys.